So this is throwing a basic cylinder. Start by just attaching the clay to the center of the wheel head, get it moving, get our hands wet. Now our first step is called coning. So I'm using this part of my hands to push forward on the clay, as well as simultaneously pulling, kind of giving pressure on that clay towards myself, keeping my thumbs upright, which as I bring my hands up will bring that clay into a cone. Now again, from a different angle, so I'm using that part of my left hand, that part of my right hand, kind of locking them together. And I'm going to squeeze inward. And as soon as I start to feel anything sticky, I'm going to pull my hands off, add some more water, and I can go right back to what I was doing. Pull this up into a cone. And then I'm going to use this part of my thumb sort of to push that cone forward a little bit, and then push it back down into more of a disc shape. Right, so again, I'm going to squeeze in, pull upwards into that cone, and then I'm going to use that part of my thumb, push forward really slightly, and then bring that clay back down. Once I've done that a few times, I'm going to center the clay. So this step is to get rid of any major wobble. So again, I'm going to, it's basically the same hand position with my left hand, but my right hand is going to switch from the side to the top of the clay. I'm going to use that blade of my right hand to push downward while my left hand pushes forward on the clay. I'm going to do that until I don't feel any asymmetry anymore. I'm going to gently float my hands off. And again, when I can't notice a wobble, then I know I've done it correctly. So from a different angle, again, you can see the wobble here. I'm going to use sort of that part of my left hand to push forward towards the center, and then I'm going to use the blade of my right hand to come directly down on the top of the clay, like that. So again, and then locking my elbows into my body, I'm going to just hold my hands as still as possible, again adding water whenever things get sticky. And that is going to eventually, if I can hold my hands perfectly still, get rid of that wobble. And I also want to be careful not to pull my hands up too quickly. As you can see, that's going to put a wobble back in there. So gradual pressure on, gradual pressure off, and that is what's going to give me that really nice, steady, centered piece of clay. So after it's centered, our next step is opening. So I'm going to kind of stack my index fingers. I'm going to start by making just a slight inverted cone at the top, and then I'm going to push inward. So again, from the top angle, I'm going to start by making just a small inverted cone, and this step loses water very quickly. So I'm going to make a small sort of reservoir and then add some water to it and go back in. And again, I'm going to push till I'm about 2/3 of the way in. And at that point, I'm going to curl my fingers towards me, which is going to open up the floor of the piece. So what we're looking for is sort of a donut shape. Now, if the center is uneven, you can go in and just kind of compress it. So again, I'm going to open it into that donut, and then I'm going to go in and compress the bottom so it's nice and flat. And that's going to be opening. Right, and from there we're going to get into pulling. So for pulling, it's a good idea to hook your hands together or attach them in some way. Then I'm going to use my left fingertips inside that donut. My right is going to meet it on the outside. I'm going to pull upwards. Now again, from the top, so I'm gonna go fingertip to fingertip. I said I use my middle fingers and my ring fingers, but you can use whatever feels comfortable. I'm gonna hook my hands together so that they can have a better sense of where they are in relationship to each other. So again, my hands are gonna meet parallel on the outside and the inside. I'm gonna squeeze in gently at the bottom and then hold my hand still like a stencil and come upwards. Now, you can kind of see the top got a little sharp there, so I'm going to go in and compress it, by sort of holding that wall with my left hand and gently pushing down with my right index finger. I'm going to add some water and I'm going to go in for a second pull. So again, slight squeeze at the bottom, then hold my hands still like a stencil and gently pull them upwards. So from a second angle, and adding water. So hands together, gonna slightly squeeze in at the bottom, and I'm gonna make sure that clay makes one full rotation before I move my hands up at all, which is gonna give you those soup can looking lines on the side. We call those throw rings. You can kind of see I have to adjust my hand position a little bit as the clay gets taller, but I still want my hands to be touching if it's at all possible. I'm going to go in and again and gradually just make things a little bit thinner, a little bit taller, and try my best to come straight upwards. Now once I have this cylinder, and if I'm feeling pretty satisfied with it, I'm going to make sure I get all of the excess water out of the center, and then I'm going to go in with this wooden knife and get that extra clay that's hanging out on the bottom. So you can see that wooden knife has two sides. I'm going to start by just pushing downward, cutting that clay off. And I'm going to flip the tool over and use the beveled side to actually remove that clay from the wheel head. From the overhead perspective, again, grabbing that wooden knife, and right at 3 o'clock, I'm going to use the flat side of this tool, get really flush with the side of my piece, hold my hands very steady, anchor into my elbows. I'm going to push straight down until I see the wheel head. So until I see metal. Then, very importantly, I'm going to flip the tool over, use that beveled side, and when I'm cutting this clay off, it's very important to use an obtuse angle. So not a right angle, but actually kind of bring it away from me like that. And that's going to give that clay a little pocket to sort of settle in, which is going to keep that clay away from my piece. So once I'm happy with my piece and I have that extra clay off of the bottom removed, I'm going to make sure there's no extra water inside my piece, so I'm going to use that sponge to get any excess water out. I'm going to stop my wheel head and put some water on it, and then I'm going to grab my cut wire, gonna hold it very taut in my hands, keep my thumbs on it, keep my thumbs on the wheel head, and then cut directly under my piece. Then I'll give it a little scoot at the bottom, slide it away from me into my hand, and then I can set it on a board. Now to clean my wheel, I'm going to grab a wooden rib or a wooden knife, anything solid. I'm going to get my wheel spinning. I'm going to use that wooden tool to scrape that extra clay off of the wheel head. Then I'm going to wring out my sponge really, really well, push it into the center of the wheel, and then work towards the outside to get it nice and clean for my next piece. Thank you so much.